From today's class, we will be discussing about the different waterfall models. Okay, so the first waterfall model is the classical waterfall model. So classical waterfall model divides life cycle into phases. So what is classical waterfall model? It is a type of life cycle model which is intuitively the most obvious way to develop a software. Okay? It is the most conventional way of developing any software. Though the classical waterfall model is elegant, we shall see that it is not a practical model in the sense that it cannot be used in actual software development projects. That is, we can consider this model to be theoretical way of developing software. Then, why study this model at all? You should be asking. The reason is that all other life cycle models are in some way or other based on the classical waterfall model. So this is the most conventional way of developing a software, and all the that is it is the mother of waterfall models, and all the waterfall models are indirectly or directly generated from this waterfall model. Like C programming is the mother of all languages, all of you know, and all the programming languages are generated directly or indirectly and related also from C programming. Similarly, classical waterfall model is the base of any waterfall model. Okay. So we therefore need to first understand the classical waterfall model well in order to be able to appreciate and develop proper understanding of other life cycle models. Okay. So besides, we will see in this schedule that this model cannot be used for software development. It has certain disadvantages. So the disadvantages I will be explaining later. So it is the model that is normally adhered to for developing software documentation. So basically, a classical waterfall model divides life cycle into phases. That is, first one is feasibility study. Next one is requirement analysis and specification. Third one is design. Fourth one is coding and unit testing. Fifth one is integration test and system testing. And last one is maintenance. Okay. So, of classical waterfall model. Okay. So observe this diagrammatic representation of this model. It resembles a cascade of waterfalls. So actually, generally, we have seen that whenever in whenever we have seen like falls, unlike this way, now any kind of falls, they flow like this. Similarly, waterfall model is also flowing like this. That's why it is called classical waterfall model. Okay. So see here. So this resembles possibly justifies the name of this model. So basically, the classical waterfall model breaks down the life cycle into an intuitive set of phases. The different phases of this model are: first one is feasibility study, next one is requirement analysis and specification. Here I have written only requirement analysis. There will be another word that is specification, and then coding, sorry, then design, then coding, then unit testing or testing, here it is unit, then maintenance, and with this it completes its phases. So the phases starting from the feasibility study to the integration and system testing phase are known as development phases. Okay. So see here, up to testing, from feasibility study to testing, or this up to this part, it is the development phase. Okay. And the next one is the maintenance. Okay. So the software that is developed during the development phases and at the end of the development phases of the life cycle, the product becomes ready to be delivered to the customer. So the maintenance phases commences after completion of the development phases. So an activity that spans all phases of any software development is project management. Since the project management activity spans the entire project duration, so that's why conveniently omitted in the life cycle diagram. So this is the life cycle diagram. And actually, project management is an important activity in the life cycle and deals with managing the effort at all stages of product development and maintenance. So the work needed to be carried out So the work needed to be carried out during different life cycle phases typically requires relatively different efforts to be put in by the development team. The relative amount of effort necessary for completing the activities of different phases for a typical product are is the figure. Okay, so we can observe that among all the life cycle phases, the maintenance phase. See, this is the maintenance phase. Okay, phase normally requires the maximum effort. So see, if this is effort. Okay, this y-axis is the effort. See here, maintenance phase requires maximum effort here. Okay, and the minimum one is the requirement specification, because in maintenance, whenever you have developed a software or anything, the most important part is to maintain that particular thing. Okay, so that's why on the average, about 60% of the total life cycle effort is spent on the maintenance activities. Okay. So however, among the development phases, the integration and system phase, testing phase requires the maximum effort in typical development project. Okay. Also, this system testing and integration testing phase, that is testing phase, is also required in requires effort in many of the projects. So that's why the different phases of what classical waterfall model are shown in this way. Okay. Next. Why do we use classical waterfall model? Most organizations usually define standards on the output produced at the end of every phase, entry and exit criteria for every phase. So here the entry criteria is the requirement analysis and the exit criteria is the maintenance. So they also prescribe the specific methodologies of specification, design, testing, project management, etc. So see here, the guidelines and methodologies of an organization called the organization software development methodology, and software development organizations accept fresher engineers to master software development. Now see, this is the first phase in classical waterfall model, which is called feasibility study. So the main aim of the feasibility study activity is to determine whether it would be financially and technically feasible to develop the product. Because if you know that the budget is not that much and you develop the software, then it is not possible, because whenever you are developing the software, you need to have a team. So that team will consist of developer as well as tester. Then many persons will be there, and each person will have some amount they should charge. They will charge, because without salary, no one is going to work in your company. So for that, you need to provide minimum amount of salary. Everyone is providing minimum salary every So that's why, if financially it is not, any project is not feasible. Suppose your total cost to maintain a team is suppose 60 days, and your client is, let us suppose, okay, and client is the project is 20, then that is not possible. So that should be financially feasible also, and technically also feasible, because if you are developing a software and the client is demanding something which is not according to your pillars, which is not your domain, then it is not technically feasible for you to develop a software. That's why these are the main criteria that anyone should follow while developing a software.
Ma'am, your voice is not clear.
Hello?
Your voice is not clear, madam.
Still
Background.
not here?
Now it's clear. Background sound was coming.
Actually, I'm sitting in.
It was getting both.
Yes, I'm sitting in the staff room actually. All in the lab. Last class I have taken in the lab, but today there was no Actually, everyone is taking classes in the labs. That's why I had to take from the classroom. And whenever I take classes from the classroom, this kind of noises comes because other teachers are also taking classes at the same time. So, so problem হচ্ছে কি?
মাঝে মাঝে প্রবলেমটা দিচ্ছে।
আচ্ছা যখন প্রবলেম হচ্ছে আমাকে বলবে, ঠিক আছে?
ওকে ম্যাডাম।
Okay. So, the feasibility study activity involves analysis of the problem and collection of all relevant information relating to the product, such as the different data items which would be input to the system. The processing required to be carried out on these data and the output data required to be produced by the system, as well as various constraints on the behavior of the system. Okay. So these collected data are analyzed to arrive at the following. So see, these are the points. Okay. So only the important first one is abstract problem definition. Okay. So only the important requirements of the customer are captured and the details of the requirements are ignored. Okay. Next is formulation of the different strategies for solving the problem. So all the different ways in which the problem can be solved are identified. Okay. First, you need to know the requirements and then you need to know the strategies how you can solve the problem. And the third one is evaluation of the different solution strategies. That is, the different solution strategies are analyzed to examine their benefits and shortcomings. This analysis actually requires making appropriate estimates of the resources required, cost of development and development time required for each of the alternate solutions. So these estimates are used as the basis for comparing the different solutions. Once the best solution is identified, all later phases of development are carried out to aspire this solution. So in other words, we can say that during the feasibility study, very high level decisions regarding the exact solution strategy are to be adopted, and therefore feasibility study is considered to be a very important stage. So at this stage, it may also be determined that none of the solutions are feasible due to high cost, resource constraints, or technical reasons. Okay. So this scenario would of course require the project to be abandoned. So that's why the case study is an example of feasibility study undertaken by an organization. So before starting any project, they actually does case study and understand that whether it is it possible or not. Okay. So it is intended to give you a feel of the activities and issues involved in the feasibility study phase of a typical software project. Okay. Yes, so these are the activities of during feasibility study. Next phase is requirement analysis and specification. Okay. Requirement analysis and specification. So we know that the aim of this requirement analysis and specification phase is to understand the exact requirements of the customer and to document their progress. Basically, this phase consists of two distinct activities, namely requirement gathering and analysis and requirement specification. First one is requirement gathering and analysis. Requirement gathering. See here, requirement gathering and analysis. So actually, this activity consists of first gathering the requirements and then analyzing the gathered requirements. So the goal of the requirement gathering activity is to collect all relevant information regarding the product to be developed from the customer with a view to clearly understand the customer requirements. Once the requirements have been gathered, the analysis activity is taken up. So the goal of the requirement analysis activity is to check out the incompleteness and inconsistencies in these requirements. So An inconsistent requirement is one where some part of the requirement contradicts with some other part. On the other hand, we can say that an incomplete requirement is one where some parts of the requirement may have been omitted. So this is about requirement analysis. Next one is the initially collected from the users contains several contradictions and ambiguities. Each user typically has only a partial and incomplete view of the system. Ambiguities and contradictions must be identified, resolved by discussions with the customers. Next, requirements are organized into a software requirement specification, that is SRS document. So how is the SRS document? Okay. This requirement engineers doing requirement analysis and specification are designated as analysts. So in a IT company, you must have seen a profile that analyst. That is, analysts are those persons who are actually checking the requirement analysis and specification for a particular project. If a client comes to your company and says that I want this work to be done, so in that case, you need to first they check whether it is feasible.
হ্যালো
Yes, hello.
ম্যাম আপনার সাউন্ডটা ঠিক করে আসছে না
এখনো আসছে না?
মানে আসছে মানে কেমনই একটা ঠিকঠাক বোঝাও যাচ্ছে না
ম্যাম কাট কাট হ্যাঁ ম্যাডাম মানে আপনার ভয়েসটা ইকো করছে হালকা করে
আসছে
আপনি
কিন্তু মানে
বলুন।
ঠিকঠাক বোঝাও যাচ্ছে না মানে কি
হ্যাঁ
বলছেন
অসুবিধা হচ্ছে
নেটওয়ার্ক প্রবলেমের জন্য হতে পারে কিন্তু মানে সাউন্ডটা আসছে কিন্তু বোঝা যাচ্ছে না আপনার কথা কিছু
আচ্ছা,
আর
কিন্তু নেটওয়ার্ক
ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ড
প্রবলেম
নয়েজ তো আছে হ্যাঁ বলুন বলুন
নেটওয়ার্ক প্রবলেম তো হওয়ার কথা নয়, কারণ কলেজে আছি, ওয়াইফাই চলছে, তো সুতরাং নেটওয়ার্ক প্রবলেম তো হওয়ার কথা নয়। বুঝতে পারছি না কেন প্রবলেম হচ্ছে, কারণ আমি তো ক্লিয়ারলি বলেই আছি। তোমরা কি শুনতে পাচ্ছ?
না ম্যাডাম আমার মানে শোনাটা অসুবিধা হচ্ছে মানে ক্লিয়ার আসছে না মানে প্রথম দিকে ক্লিয়ার আসছিল কত 5-10 মিনিট ধরে অমনি মানে ইকো করছে কখনো ডিস্টারবেন্স দিচ্ছে
আচ্ছা, তাহলে এটা কি করা যায় বলো তো, একটু সলিউশন।
আপনি কথা বললেই ম্যাডাম ওই জিনিসটা আসছে ওইটাই বুঝতে পারছি মানে একটা কি ধরনের আওয়াজ হয়ে যাচ্ছে
কেমন আওয়াজ আসছে? কোনো হেডফোনের
হ্যাঁ
প্রবলেম হচ্ছে? তারা একটু হোল্ড করো, হেডফোনটা দেখি আর রিইনসার্ট করে। ওকে,
ওকে ম্যাডাম ওকে
হ্যালো,
হ্যাঁ ম্যাডাম
ঠিক আছে? সাউন্ডটা এখনো আছে?
সাউন্ডটা ক্লিয়ার হলো ম্যাডাম কিন্তু ওই ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ডে যেগুলো আছে ওগুলো আছে ঠিক আছে ম্যাডাম
ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ডে
এমনি করুন
আসলে স্যাররা পড়াচ্ছে, তো স্যার ম্যামরা সব
হ্যাঁ
পড়াচ্ছে, এই আওয়াজ।
ঠিক আছে ম্যাডাম কন্টিনিউ করুন
ঠিক আছে, ঠিক আছে। ওকে, সো okay, so this is in any company, so the analysts are there. Okay, so basically the customer requirements identified during the requirements gathering and analysis activity are organized into a software requirement specification document. So the three most important contents of this document are the functional requirements, non-functional requirements, and the goal of the implementation. So functional requirements describe the functions to be supported by the system. Each function can be characterized by the input data, the processing required on the input data, and output data to be produced. The non-functional requirements identify the performance requirements, the required standards to be followed, etc. So the SRS document is written using end user terminology. This makes the SRS document understandable by the user. After all, it is important that the SRS document be viewed and approved by the customer. The SRS document normally serves as a contract between the development team and the customer. Okay, so any future dispute between the customer and the developers can be settled by examining the SRS document. So whenever a customer comes to a company for customer or client, you can say, comes to company for a project, then first the SRS documentation is maintained. Okay, first they document what are the requirements of those clients, because if after completion of the project, it may happen that the client is not agreeing to what we said earlier while starting of the project, because verbal communication has no, we know that verbal communication has no validity. Whatever it is written, that is valid. Okay? We know that official, that's why we put official notices so that it can be documented. So that's why SRS documentation is maintained in the beginning of the project, and after to check whether that whatever the client has said, it is actually corresponding to the document or not. Okay, so the SRS document is therefore an important document which must be thoroughly understood by the developer team and reviewed jointly by the customers. Okay, so that's why everyone, the developer and both the customers, should have a joint meeting with the SRS document. So the SRS document is not only forms the basis for carrying out all the development activities, but several documents such as users manual, system test plan, etc. are prepared directly based on it. Okay, so after few chapters, we will thoroughly understand what is SRS document and how to develop a good SRS document. It is the design part. Okay, so what is how the design is work? So design phase transforms requirement specification into a form suitable for the implementation in some programming language. In technical terms, so basically the goal of the design phase is to transform the requirements specified in the SRS document into a structure that is suitable for implementation in some programming language. In technical terms, during the design phase, the software architecture is derived from the SRS document. Two distinctly different design approaches are being used at present. So there are two different design approach. First one is the traditional approach, and the next one is the object-oriented approach. So what's basically the so the traditional design approach is currently being used by many software development houses. So the traditional design technique is based on the data flow oriented design. So while using this technique, the design phase consists of two important activities. First is the structural analysis, and the next one is the structured design. So what is structured analysis is actually the requirement specification is carried out here, where the detailed structure of the problem is examined. This is followed by a structured design activity. During structured design, the result of structured analysis are transformed into the software.
Hello, madam.
বলো, এখনো শোনা যাচ্ছে না?
ম্যাডাম
আওয়াজ প্রবলেম হচ্ছে?
না, এ কেটে গেল। ট্রেডিশনাল ডিজাইন অ্যাপ্রোচ থেকে কেটে গেল, মানে অমনি করে সাউন্ডটা আবার ডিস্টার্ব দিচ্ছে।
এটা বুঝতে পারছি না কেন হচ্ছে, সত্যি বলতে পারছি না। আমি তো বলেই আছি কিন্তু আচ্ছা তোমরা
করে
বুঝতে
মানে
পারছো আমি কি বলছি? আমি নিজেই পড়ে যাচ্ছি। Students, are you following? Only Shumon is responding.
আপনার সাউন্ড ম্যাডাম কেটে কেটে আসছে, মাঝে মাঝে কেটে যাচ্ছে, মাঝে মাঝে কেমন হচ্ছে।
আচ্ছা দাঁড়াও, এর পরদিন তোমাদের জন্য আমি গিয়ে প্রথমে ল্যাবে গিয়ে বসে থাকছি।
হ্যাঁ, আপনি একটা অন্য রুমে যান না, তাহলে যদি ভালো হতে পারে।
এখন তো কোথাও মুভ করতে পারবো না, কারণ মিডল অফ ক্লাস হয়ে গেছে। এখন পড়ে যেতে যেতে তোমাদের ক্লাস ওভার হয়ে যাবে। নেক্সট ক্লাস যখন হবে, কালকে আছে তো, তোমাদের কালকে 10টা থেকে ক্লাস আছে, তো সকালবেলা 10টার সময় ল্যাবই খুলবে কিনা জানি না। তো যাই হোক, ঠিক আছে, দেখছি। কাল 10টার সময় তোমাদের ক্লাস আছে না? 10টা থেকে 11টা।
দাঁড়ান দেখি। হ্যাঁ ম্যাডাম।
হ্যাঁ, তো এই কারণেই 10টা থেকে 11টায় যেহেতু ক্লাস আছে, জানি না কালকেও ল্যাব যেতে পারবে কিনা। ল্যাব খোলে না সবসময়, তাও দেখবো স্যারদের সঙ্গে কথা বলে রাখছে যেন সকালবেলায় ল্যাবটা খুলে দেয় মানে
ম্যাডাম
at least
অন্য ওই ওই আমাদের স্টাফ রুমের পাশে একটা রুম আছে দেখবেন,
ওই
ওইখানে
রুমটাতেও
করি না।
কিছু ক্লাস নিচ্ছে।
বাবা,
আসলে এখন তো
সব-
ক্লাসরুম খোলা নেই না, সব এখন টিচাররা সবাই
হ্যাঁ
এখন কলেজে আসছে। আগে আমাদের 3 days ওয়ার্কিং ছিল, এখন 6 days হয়ে গেছে। 6 দিন যখন কলেজে সবাই আসছে তাহলে সবারই একটা মানে জায়গা চাই ক্লাস নেওয়ার জন্য। প্রত্যেকটা রুমই অলরেডি অ্যালোকেটেড, ইভেন প্রত্যেকটা ল্যাবেও অলরেডি সবাই বসে বসে ক্লাস নিচ্ছে। এটাই প্রবলেম হয়ে যাচ্ছে। যাই হোক, তোমরা একটা কাজ করবে, যদি কিছু না শুনতে পাও এখন বা কোনো কিছু আটকে আছে, রেকর্ডিংটা শুনবে। রেকর্ডিং এ কিন্তু ক্লিয়ার শোনা যায়, ঠিক আছে? তো আমি রেকর্ডিং লিঙ্কটা তো তোমাদের শেয়ার করেই দেবো। I will share the recording link as well as I'm going to today share the TCS, and in the TCS and I am going to share the recording link here, and you can download the recording from MS Team also. So if you want, you can download it from MS Team. But at the end of today, I will be uploading the link in the TCS and so whatever you feel comfortable, you can view the lecture from there. Okay. Okay. So structured analysis involves preparing a detailed analysis of the different functions to be supported by the system and identification of the flow of the data flow among the functions. So each function required by the user is studied carefully and then recursively decomposed into various subfunctions. So in addition to identifying the various functions in the system, the data flow among the functions are also identified. So the data flow diagrams are used to perform structured analysis and to document the results. So that's why we have seen that in the second module, there is a topic named data flow diagram. So remember that data flow diagram is used in the design approach, especially in the traditional design approach. So basically the data flow diagram is a technique which is used for structured analysis, which restricts itself to what needs to be done. Sorry. Be done aspects of the problem and carefully avoids discussing the how to do it aspects. So during structured analysis, the functional requirements specified in the SRS document are decomposed into sub-functions, and the data flow among these sub-functions is analyzed and represented diagrammatically in the form of DFTs. Basically, DFT is the diagrammatic representation. So structured design is undertaken once the structured analysis activity is complete. So structured design consists of two main activities. First one is the architectural design. Okay. This is the DFT. First one is the architectural design or high level design, and the second one is detailed design. So high level, and it is the low level design. So high level design involves composing the system into modules and representing the interfaces and the invocation relationships among the modules. So a high level software design is sometimes referred to as the software architecture, and during detailed design, internals of the individual modules are designed in greater detail. Okay. Examples, the data structures and algorithms of the modules are designed and documented. Several well-known methodologies are also available for working out the architectural and low-level design. So this is all about the traditional design approach. Okay. High level and detailed. So next one is the object-oriented design approach. So as we have seen that object-oriented design is a relatively new technique. Okay. Because it earlier there was no such technique, object-oriented technique. but nowadays we have implemented for our ease of access object-oriented design. So in this technique, various objects that occur in the problem domain and the solution domain are first identified, and the different relationships that exist among these objects are identified. The object structure is further defined to obtain the detailed design. The object-oriented design approach has several benefits such as lower development time and effort and better maintenance ability of the project. Okay? That's why object-oriented design is the latest one. So that's why here first we identify various objects like real-world entities that are occurring in the problem, and it identifies the relationship among the objects. For example, the object in a payroll software may be employees, manager, payroll, register, and department. So see here, but if we consider this object-oriented design in our college, we can say that in our college there are several entities. And entities means anything that exists. Okay, as we have seen that entities. Okay, entities, and there are certain relationship among those entities. Okay, so entities are nothing but the objects. And see here in our college, what are the entities? Entities are the employees. That is, we teachers are the employees. Okay, so entity is a teacher. Okay. Next is student. They are also, you students are also entities of this college. Okay, so student, then building, all these are the entities. That is, these are the objects that are used to form this university or this college. Okay, now there are certain relationships between these entities and the students. Like see here, this teacher is teaching a student. So the relationship between teacher and student, that is me and all of you, is I am teaching you. So the relationship is like teacher teaches the student. Okay, teacher teaches the student. Similarly, student and building is students reside in buildings or they stay in buildings for study. So in this way, these are the entities, these are the relationships. And in object-oriented design approach, it is actually consisting of entities and relationships in this way. These are the object-oriented design approach. Basically, object structure further defined to obtain the detailed design and has several advantages like lower development effort, as I said, lower development time and maintainability. Okay? And implementation and testing, I will be discussing in the next class. So as of now, students, have you understood whatever I have said? That is the all this waterfall model phases, like first, that is requirement analysis and specification and design. This two part is clear to everyone, and feasibility study is clear to everyone. These three phases are clear. Am I audible?
Yes, madam, you are audible, madam.
It's clear.
नहीं हुआ क्लियर मैम आज।
सॉरी,
क्लियर
नहीं हुआ क्लियर?
नहीं मैडम।
क्या प्रॉब्लम हुआ, बोलो, कहाँ नहीं समझ आया?
मैम सारे टॉपिक में 30%
पता नहीं चला।
मैम
अरे इतना जन मत बोलो, एक एक करके बोलो क्या बोल रहे हो?
One at a time.
पता ही नहीं चला।
वॉइसটা শুনতে পাচ্ছি না।
वॉइसটা
निकल गया और आवाज भी आने लगा।
Okay. For today's class, do one thing: go to the downloads and download the lecture and see the lecture. Okay.
ম্যাম ওই নেটের জন্যই মনে হচ্ছে আপনার প্রবলেম, কলেজের নেট ভালো না।
তাই কি? তাহলে আর কি করবো বলো? কলেজে থাকলে তো কলেজের নেটই ইউজ করতে হবে।
ম্যাম কলেজের নেটওয়ার্কে কোনদিন ভালো নেট পাইনি, বাজে ম্যাডাম।
বাকি ক্লাসগুলো কি এরকম প্রবলেম হয় তোমাদের?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ ম্যাডাম, ও কারোর কথা
আর
শুনতে পারে
তাহলে
কেউ
আর
তো।
কি করা যাবে বলো? তাহলে তোমরা একটা কিছু রিকুইজিশন দাও, নেটটা একটু যাতে ভালো হয়, যাতে তোমরা ভালো করে শুনতে পাও, আমরাও ভালো করে ক্লাস নিতে পারি।
না, আপনি আপনার যদি কলেজ থেকে পারমিশন চাই, আমরা সবাই কলেজ চলে যাওয়ার জন্য রাজি আছি।
কলেজ আমাদের খুলবে অক্টোবর থেকেই খুলে যাবে শুনেছিলাম, অক্টোবর কি নভেম্বর থেকে খুলবে, তখন তোমরা তো এমনিই আসতে পারবে, কিন্তু এখন তো পারমিশন দিচ্ছে না, কি করা যাবে বলো? সে তো জানি তোমরা এতদিন ধরে ঘরে বসে আছো, ঘরে বসে বসে বোর হচ্ছো, সেই জন্য তোমাদের কলেজে আসতে খুবই ইচ্ছে করছে, স্বাভাবিক। স্টুডেন্ট, তোমরা কলেজ লাইফটা ফিলই করতে পারছো। অবভিয়াসলি তোমাদের জায়গায় আমরা থাকলেও একই, আমাদেরও ফিল হতো। তো এখন কি বা করা যাবে, এখন তোমাদের আপাতত তো বন্ধ রেখেছে, এটা আমাদের কলেজ না, এটা মানে ওয়েস্ট বেঙ্গলের গভর্নমেন্টই বন্ধ করে দিয়েছে, তবে পুজোর পর খুলবে হয়তো, তখন তোমরা আসতে পারবে। ঠিক আছে, আজকের ক্লাস ইজ ক্লিয়ার টু এভরিওয়ান? ইজ ইট ক্লিয়ার স্টুডেন্টস?
ইয়েস ম্যাডাম।
Download the lecture for the disturbance. If you are getting disturbance, download the lecture, there you can hear everything properly. Okay, and in the next class I will try to sit in the lab without any noise, background noise, so that you can clearly listen to my each and every words, whatever I am saying, whatever I am explaining, try to understand. And this subject is not that much difficult subject, basically theory. So if you go through the book, if you go through the lectures, you can easily understand. There are few modules which I will be giving you, which I will tell you with extra care that needs to be taken while in that part. There are certain numericals, so I will be doing those numericals, but then I will tell you that this is very important. So take a note of it and try to solve those numericals. Otherwise, the rest of the topics are theoretical. So you need to just go through you need to read those things, okay, to understand. Just take the attendance for today. Okay, students. So fine, students. So thank you for attending today's class. Now you can leave.
থ্যাংক ইউ ম্যাডাম।